My name is Adam. Good creative morning to all of you. As you can probably imagine, I've been thinking a lot about symmetry. I've been observing symmetry in the world around us. I've been thinking a lot more about how symmetry works. But most importantly, for what I want to talk about today, I've thought about ways that I can apply symmetry in my life to bring more balance and integration between my creativity and my career. This image is not symmetrical. This is a surrealist painting by René Magritte, and I don't know what you all feel when you look at this painting, but for me, it's a little unsettling, it's a little disjointed, it feels a little bit fractured. And I think we can all agree that in our daily lives, with all that we have to do and all the technology that surrounds us and all that is going on in the world, our lives can increasingly feel fractured. What I want to talk about today is where we see symmetry in the world around us, how symmetry works, not in a highly technical sense, but just to give you an idea of how to look at things that are symmetrical and understand how they're symmetrical, and how to apply a thing called vertical symmetry to your life in an effort to achieve greater balance and integration between your creativity and your career. So, symmetry is something that we see all over the place, and it often creates a feeling of harmony, quiet, peace, serenity, and of course, order. And we see it in architecture. We see it in landscape design. This is a park on Roosevelt Island in New York City. Interior design. In photography, this is a photograph by Hannes Egler, who observed symmetry in the world around him and then created a symmetrical image. We see it in product design. This is kind of amazing to me because this on the left, or on your left, that's a transistor radio designed by Dieter Rams, and then of course echoed in the first generation iPod many years later. Obviously we see a lot of symmetry in nature. One of the most obvious places we see it is in the human body, in the human face. In fact, it supposedly has been scientifically proven that the more symmetrical face is more attractive to other humans. I'll let you be the judge. Let's take a look at this case study, which is Leonardo DiCaprio. Pretty symmetrical face, but it's not perfectly symmetrical. If it was perfectly symmetrical, obviously there would either be two left sides or two right sides. I think I'm going with two left sides for my Leo. Take your pick. There is symmetry in food. The hamburger is possibly one of the more symmetrical meals you can have. And it's symmetrical because no matter how you slice it or which side you bite into, you're going to taste the same layers. You're going to have the same taste sensation. Now, this is a hamburger. I'm going to tip my hand a little. I prefer the vegan burger in consideration of our animal friends. Plus, later today, that beer might look really good. Not only do we see symmetry in a visual sense in the world around us, sometimes you can find symmetry in non-visual terms. For example, in literature. Often in films or stories, there's a framing device. It leads you into the story and leads you out of the story in the same way. This is Anton Chekhov. He was famous for using a framing device in his short stories. And it became sort of a classic template for how to write a short story. So, once again, this is a non-scientific look at how symmetry works and how you can observe symmetry in the world around you and kind of understand it. So one of the ways that symmetry works is it creates a pattern, and that pattern creates an expectation. And that can be helpful because if you break the pattern, you can draw your attention to the break in the pattern. So sometimes symmetry is used to call attention to something that is asymmetrical. Sometimes symmetry is implied. This image looks symmetrical, but it actually isn't symmetrical. It suggests symmetry, and through that suggestion of symmetry, in my opinion, it lends a feeling of harmony. However, in technical terms, it is not symmetrical because the two halves don't match up, no matter how you invert them. So at the same time that it creates a feeling of harmony and order, it creates a feeling of tension. Sometimes it can be hard to identify how something is symmetrical. This is a symmetrical image. It's actually a design called Swiss Ritual by Devin Sager. And it is symmetrical, but you can take that information and go online and see if you can spend some time figuring out how it's symmetrical, because it's not symmetrical in the most obvious of ways. Which leads me to the axis. Most symmetrical designs are organized along an axis. And what that means is when you find the axis, on either side of that axis, you'll have mirror images. In this one, it's fairly obvious that the axis is diagonal. In other words, if you fold the top half down, it will line up exactly with the bottom half, and the two halves are mirror images. But there's not always one axis in a symmetrical design. One example of symmetry that we see a lot in the natural world, you can think of sunflowers or starfish, is radial axes. If something has radial symmetry, it means that you can draw an axis anywhere, and if you fold it, the two sides will be mirror images and match up. This is another obvious example. This is horizontal symmetry, which in this one, literally, the bottom half is a mirror reflection of the top half. Now, I want to talk about something called vertical symmetry. But first of all, I just want to confirm with you guys that we all agree that this hamburger, or this vegan burger, is not horizontally symmetrical. How many of you eat your hamburger from the top down? You. Interesting. In my opinion, eating your hamburger in that way can lead to some awkward social situations. It's also maybe not the optimal eating experience. The best way to eat the burger, in my opinion, most popular by far, is from the side. When you eat a burger, no matter which side you choose, you get to experience all of the layers of the burger. And this is why I want to talk about vertical symmetry. Partly because it's easy to apply the concept of vertical symmetry to my life. That's what I've found. And to help me with this new way of thinking about how I organize the different parts of my life. So I come to Creative Mornings because it gives me an opportunity to meet all of you amazing creative people. And you're usually not only creative, you are entrepreneurial and you're career-oriented. So I've been thinking a lot about how to use vertical symmetry to find greater balance in my life. So in order to help you understand how I'm applying symmetry in my creativity and career balance in my life, I'm going to tell you a little story. In 2003, I graduated from a Master's of Fine Arts in Acting program in San Francisco, and I moved to New York City with dreams of having a career as an actor. And I got work as an actor, but as some of you may know, it's hard to make a living as an actor. Even if you work, you don't necessarily make a sustainable income. And so most actors, especially in New York, where it's very expensive, get a side job. We sometimes call it a day job or a side hustle. And when I thought about the tension that existed in my life at that time, I sort of created a mental map that reflected that. And the problem that I experienced in my life is that the two spheres of my life were segregated. And I felt like the person I was in my creative life was segregated from who I was when I went to my job. I didn't feel like the same person in my job. And I was always struggling to find a balance of how to integrate myself so that I could bring myself more fully to every endeavor in my life. But this tension never entirely went away. I wanted to bring more self-expression, humor, and collaboration to my career, but I wasn't able to. So in 2011, I made an important decision, which was I decided to focus on my career instead. I decided to focus on my day job. So I got a full-time job at a tech startup, and I became a director of content, whatever that means. And I thought that this would help me feel more integrated and bring more of my creative self into my everyday life. But it actually didn't have that effect. What happened is that my creativity, actually, that sphere of my life actually shrunk. And I wasn't really successfully able to bring things like self-expression, inspiration, and humor into my career life. Now, this may have been due to a mental block, but I think it's a fairly common problem that we don't feel able to be fully ourselves in our careers. Or if we have creative ambitions, it is always a challenge to fuse your creative ambitions and goals with some kind of a career. So, in 2015, I made another big decision. And that decision was that I had the opportunity to join the leadership team of a small, scrappy design company called Radish Lab. Radish Lab is an interactive digital agency that works exclusively from nonprofit, educational, and cultural sectors, and we help them connect with their audiences through storytelling, design, and technology. That's not the most important part. The most important part is that Radish encourages its employees to pursue creative projects, to pursue creative goals, and to bring that creativity into the office place because they recognize the value that that creativity brings for the company. So, as I was working at Radish Lab, I started to loosen up a little. It wasn't an immediate process, but I felt free to bring more humor and more of myself into my job. And eventually, I was able to start acting again. When I moved to, and not only was I able to start acting again, I started teaching acting in New York. Then when I moved to Berlin, I started an acting studio, and it's now part of Radish Lab. And I lead workshops with clients to help them work on communication and ideation using acting techniques. So this mental map of mine started to shift. I realized that I could bring competencies and energies and priorities that I had segregated into my creative life into my work life, and vice versa. And I also started to realize that that could be incredibly effective. So this is how my mental map eventually evolved. As you can see, the creative and the career sides are now merged. They're practically one and the same. I've also organized these energies, priorities, competencies in a symmetrical way, in a vertically symmetrical way. There's a vertical axis that goes down the middle, and on each side of this conceptual hamburger, you get every layer in every bite. Now, it's not just about achieving more balance, as I said, it's about the value that you bring in everything that you do when you enable yourself to bring all the layers of your priorities, energies, competencies to whatever you do. And the idea of vertical symmetry really helped me realize conceptually how to do this, and through that conceptual realization, how to do it more actively in my life. A colleague of mine recently challenged me to make a mental map of my life's priorities. And as sometimes happens when you do something really quickly without thinking about it, I sort of I sketched something out on a napkin, and it looked a lot like this. And sometimes when you do something really fast, it actually reveals the way your mind works and the way you perceive the world. And as I looked back at this, this graphic representation, this visualization, I realized that I had some issues to resolve. The biggest one is that me, Adam, I'm separate from my life priorities. I'm outside of them. These different spheres of my life that sort of represent the main priorities or needs that I have in my life are also segregated. There's a tangential connection, but as I saw before, when I tangentially try to connect spheres of my life, I didn't really find much balance. So what I decided to do is to challenge myself to apply this notion of creating a mental map that reflected vertical symmetry for these priorities. And this is what it ended up looking like. Now, this could get a lot more detailed. There could be a lot more layers. But just as a sketch, it reminds me of a few things. For one, it reminds me of those visualizations of those anatomical representations of the human body that are used to illustrate Ayurvedic chakras, which are very important to keep in balance. It also reminds me of these kinds of sculptures of like Hindu deities. This happens to be a Buddhist goddess. And when I look at this, I get feelings of wisdom, serenity, calm, but also variety and a kind of a multidisciplinary aptitude. Which brings me back to our vegan burger. So this burger reminds me a little bit, the layers of the burger remind me a little bit of how I prepare a role if I'm in a play, in the theater. The more layers I bring to a character, the more human it is, the more lifelike it is, the more believable it is. So you may bring your, the energies that you bring to any situation may depend on the context of the situation. However, the more of those layers you bring, the more the people who are involved in it will get out of it, and the more you can distribute those layers among the many endeavors in your life, be they personal, creative, or professional. This guy's name is Leif. He was born on October 18th, 2018. That's my son. And if you're asking yourself why I'm showing you this picture, it's because this guy has come to represent a huge layer of my mental map. And I thought it would be interesting as an exercise to apply my concept of bringing vertical symmetry to all things that I do to this talk. Because this guy represents such a huge part of my mental map, I feel that it allows the people who I come in contact with to get more context and perspective about who I am and hopefully connect better to me and to what I have to say. So I am not a motivational speaker and I don't write books about how to optimize your life. However, a lot of times a motivational speaker or an author of such a book has a super handy, pithy acronym that they use to help people remember the core principles of whatever philosophy or theory they're sharing. Has anyone ever heard of HALT? No. Okay. HALT is something that you use when you're having a really no good, very bad day, about to have a meltdown, and you can just say, HALT. And you ask yourself 4 questions. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? If you're hungry, you can have a snack, a vegan burger. If you're angry, take a deep breath, do some yoga, chill out. If you're lonely, find a friend, ask for a hug. If you're tired, take a nap. Sometimes you have to do all 4. So I decided that I would create a very easy to remember mnemonic acronym to help you guys think about how to apply vertical symmetry in creating more balance in your life. And that acronym, of course, is ABWAB. Easy to remember, right? And obviously, that stands for align, balance, and bite the whole burger. As an exercise for yourself, and this is how things change in your life starts out. You start to create new mental images and new connections in your brain. Imagine all of the priorities and layers of your life, your competencies, where you spend your energy, your priorities, and see if you can align them on a vertical axis so that they're balanced on both sides. Most importantly, once you've got all those layers aligned and all that multiplicity of who you are as a human being, and you've got that burger, bite into it. Bite the whole burger, bite all the layers, and in fact, share the burger with others so that they can bite into it and experience the full you. Thank you guys for coming out this morning and listening to my theory about vertical symmetry. If you want to chat after this talk, I brought 2 symmetrical piles of business cards. So you can approach me, tap me on either shoulder, and I will give you my undivided attention. Thank you very much.